Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 8.18 AD Carry Tier List. So, if you want to find timestamps, you can look in the description, jump around your favorite parts. You can also find this Google Doc in the description if you want to jump around and sort of get the TLDR version. Also have a little mini Google Doc next to each one of the champions. If you click on that, it'll send you a link to the Wikia. Then it'll also give you a quick rating system, which I'll go over here in just a second. It talks about runes, recommended items. I'll talk about this more when I get to those champions, some of the different options. I just put kind of the most basic scenario there for you. As far as the ratings go, lane pressures is how likely are you to get priority and sort of exert your will on the lane, being able to poke, being able to push, just anything else you can do to really, just exert your will on the lane. And then kill threat is how likely are you to be able to get kills in the game, particularly in the laning phase, but also beyond. Safety, how safe are you from ganks? How well can you position in team fights? Do you have escapes if you get caught out? Scaling, how well does your champion perform over time as you get multiple items as the game progresses? And then reliability is kind of twofold. One, how difficult is the champion mechanically to play? Does it have a lot of skill shots, animation canceling, different kind of quirks that you have to practice a lot to master mechanically? And then second, how reliant is the champion on snowballing or other factors in the meta? So how easy is it to shut them down from the enemy's perspective? So even if you can play the champion well mechanically, how likely is it that the enemy will be able to find answers, right? So that goes into the reliability of a champion. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. Now, not a ton has changed since last patch, but a little bit has. So we'll go ahead and keep going over it. Xayah did get nerfed on this patch, but I still think that she's going to be the best overall. She just has insane scaling, multiple build paths. She can adjust very well to how the game's going. She can go AD, she can go AP, she can get utility items, even like Hourglass, sometimes if she needs them. So she doesn't have a lot going on as far as the laning phase goes, but she can still get a couple of kills in there, especially once she hits 6 and get Stormrazor, which a lot of Xayahs are still getting. If you're facing a lot of tanks, you kind of have a pushover lane. You're against like an Ezeal or something like that. You can skip Stormrazor and just go straight into the Gensu's Nasher build if you want to try to crack through those tanks. But, she's the most played by a long shot, both in solo queue and professionally. It's just not even close this week. She's played 38 times to Varus's second. So, this is for a plat minus audience. This is not pro play, but I'm just saying it's everywhere. She's ubiquitously... she's just ubiquitous everywhere. She's everywhere. She's really strong. Now, she only has like a 51% win rate, but she has almost a 30% play rate. And that's a lot of people playing her. That means that there's a lot of people playing her that don't really know how to play her. They don't practice her. The autofills are playing her if the play rate's that high. So, very, very strong right now. You're still just going to want to go fleet footwork most of the time. If it is an easy lane, you can go press the attack. It does do a lot of extra damage. It not only increases your auto attack damage, but also your ability damage. So your passive, because it's magic damage, gets a big boon out of that. And then so does like your Q, your W, all that kind of stuff. But usually it's just going to be Fleet, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and then Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm. And then you can just go Gensu, Nasher, Deathcap. It's a standard AP build. If you need a bit more AD, you can go Stormrazor. As you can see, it's kind of all over the place. Some people will go for that build I was talking about a second ago. If you're having a hard time, you can get Zhonya's. So you can go like Gensu's, Nasher's, Zhonya's. It's becoming pretty popular. You can also go for like Runin's Hurricane if you need more AD. So like Stormrazor, Hurricane, IE, just a standard build like that can still work because she has really good AD and AP ratios. But she's particularly a nice choice if your team is already overloaded on AD. So if someone picked like Yasuo top, Kindred jungle, and Zed middle, or something like that, then she does have that AP option, and she's one of the few AD carries on the list that has that option. So very versatile, scales very well later into the game. She's just really overpowered, so you should definitely pick or ban her most games. Draven is another one who's almost always going to be up near the top of tier 1 unless they really nerf him into the dirt. Now he is someone where a lot of his strength is dependent on practice because you need to be able to catch his axes. So it sounds easy, just catch the axes, but you have to catch the axes without many escapes, and you also have to dodge, a lot of skill shots while you're catching those axes, because as you go up in elo, people are going to know like where those axes are going to land, and they're going to throw their Nami bubbles there, their pike hooks, all of that stuff to try to catch you out on that. So It makes him pretty hard to play, but he does snowball very well. He's a huge early game bully. Some of the bullies did get nerfed over the last couple of patches, the Jhin, the Misfortunes, and so that has made him a bit stronger. And of course, he does snowball really, really hard because he gets a ton of extra gold, and he scales really, really well with flat AD. So he doesn't require multiple items like some of the crit items do to really get going. He can just like start crushing people right off the bat, just off of one item. So very strong, snowballs very well, almost always a really high win percentage. Usually if you see this guy in solo queue, if someone picks Draven, it's going to be a one trick, it's going to be scary. So, you know, if you do an op.gg, they have a Draven, you have like an auto-filled AD carry who's playing Ezreal, you got to really start calculating that in there, especially with aggressive supports that are coming back. You're seeing more Leonas, Pikes, Thresh, all of that stuff. You're seeing a lot less Janna, a lot less. You might still be seeing some Sona. Nami is very aggressive, so she is an enchanter, but she can put out a lot of pain early on. So I think you're seeing a lot of hook champions, a lot of really aggro champs, and Nami. So I think that's a very good meta for Draven. So super strong champ. If you want to roll a Draven, Conquer is what you get. It helps you cut through tanks later, gives you a ton of damage early. The reason that you go Conquer is because you get a ton of extra free AD off of your Q early on. And so, and it has really good AD scaling as well, so it just gives you a ton of extra burst damage early on. So he's uniquely suited to run Conquer. So it's just kind of weird because he does so much burst off of just a couple of auto attacks, that the fact that it falls off in 3 seconds doesn't matter because they're going to be dead in under 3 seconds early in the game. And then just the standard Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Absolute Focus, Gathering Storm. Now, a lot of people like to go a lifesteal item early, either Bloodthirster or Death's Dance. I think Bloodthirster is a bit more popular these days. But the reason for that is, once again, you get a lot of extra AD off of your Q, and it scales with AD really well, and that can lifesteal. So you get a lot of lifesteal because of your Q early on, and oftentimes the lifesteal items have some of the highest base AD values as well. So like Bloodthirster, for example, I think has 80 AD. Yeah. Versus, you know, if you just get like Stormrazor or whatever, like that's still going to have 60, but it's not 80. So people are going Stormrazor still. That does combine really well with, you know, Conquer. You get that extra crit in there. So, you know, I think either there's an argument for either Stormrazor or Bloodthirster, but I would get those two early on, just depending on which order you want to get them in. But yeah, Bloodthirster, Stormrazor, and then Rapid Fire Cannon. Just hit them as fast and as hard as you can with Draven. Start stacking up those kills. Okay. Lucian. Now, this is someone who rose to prominence a little bit more than I had initially suspected. So he did get a little buff to his Q. He gets an extra 20 AD. As I was talking about my patch notes video that I just recorded, he doesn't get a lot of AD, though. You know, he gets Blade of the Ruined King, which has 40 AD on it, and then he gets Black Cleaver, which doesn't have any. Then he gets Phantom Dancer, which doesn't have any. So I don't think that the Q buff really was that much, has that much to do with him. I think it's more so, kind of like with Draven, that the Jhin and Misfortune got nerfed a little bit because Lethality and sort of Stormrazor got nerfed there. But, and then you need an early game bully to help combat things like Xayah, right? Things like Xayah, Jinx, Twitch. And so Lucian can do that. So he's a very good kind of early game burst champion. And he's very good with those aggressive supports, right? The Pike, the Thresh, the Leona. All very popular right now, and he can convert those kills. He's very, very strong off of a single item, too. As soon as he gets that Blade of the Ruined King, he uses that item better than almost anybody in the game. Because whenever he gets those double shots off his passive, it triggers that twice. So Blade gets a lot better when Stormrazor gets worse. And when Critical Strike is still not in an amazing place. Gensu's been nerfed. So Blade of the Ruined King is one of the better starting items if you can afford to start with that for a lot of champions. So I think that's really nice for him. Also, a lot of supports aren't running a heal or a shield or like in lane. I guess you've got Nami, but it is very helpful to be able to heal yourself up with that Vamp Scepter that you get early on going into the Blade of the Ruined King. It's very forgiving if you take some bad trades too. So he is kind of a little mechanically intense. You have to be able to use his combos correctly so that you're appropriately, you know, activating his passive. And people aren't going for the Essence Reaver build anymore. I think a lot of people kind of got tricked into building that, myself included. I thought it might be good on him. It's really not. Like, you see a couple of people sneaking it in there every now and then, but it's really not the place to be. Most people are going to go Blatherin King into Cleaver. It's just a great combo. You get a lot of CDR off of it. The armor reduction off of this applies to the Blatherin King passive because that is physical damage, so it gets blocked by armor. So you reduce the armor, and then the passive does more damage. So it's a really nice combination there of abilities. And as you can see, some people are sneaking in Ghostblade. I haven't seen this. I haven't tried this build. I assume this is an if you're really far ahead, start snowballing kind of build. But that might work really well with Black Cleaver, particularly against squishy targets, because this will reduce their armor by 24%, and then the flat lethality kicks in. So that might be something to consider. Some people are going back to kind of the Dustblade build as well. If you're just trying to really just slam dunk the game and run it over early, maybe that's an option. Some people are still going Infinity Edge. He does start off strong, as I mentioned before, as soon as he goes for Blatherin King, but then if you go for like Cleaver, that does slow down your damage a little bit. It's a nice utility item. Then if you have to stop and get something like Phantom Dancer and then build into Infinity Edge, that's nice, but you have a little lull there while you're building your crit item and then working towards Infinity. That's not going to be as strong. So maybe the thought process is, okay, well, I'm just going to go, you know, Youmuu's early. The lethality is so good on him because, you know, he does a lot of damage off of his Q and off of his ultimate. This will allow you to run people down with your ult and finish them off. So I haven't personally tried this or seen this, but if you're really experienced on Lucian, this could be a pretty good build. Just going like the Blatherin King, Cleaver, Youmuu's, just so you get that extra little pop on your third item, so you don't have to wait to your fourth item. So it just kind of smooths out your curve a little bit. Now, you're not going to do as much damage in the very late game if you get this. It also gives you 10% CDR, which is awesome for him because Blatherin King doesn't give you any, obviously. So I think that's interesting. Edge of Night could also be pretty handy, you know, if they have a lot of CC or something like that. Maybe, and the Dustblade does give you some burst. So I'd have to toy around with this. We'll see. You know, I think I would err on the side of still going Blatherin King, Cleaver, like some kind of crit item, Phantom Dancer, and then Infinity Edge. But, you know, more and more people are experimenting with Ghostblade, so give it a try. I think that would make sense if you're really snowballing hard and you just want to close out the game. So if you're ahead, you get 3 or 4 kills in the lane, maybe give it a try. But it's always Blade Cleaver, I'm pretty sure, in almost every scenario. Get that first. Okay, Jinx is going to be pretty strong too. I put Jinx a little bit above Twitch, and I have been in recent patches just because she has a bit more presence early on. And a lot of that is her wave clear. So she has really nice wave clear off of her rockets. You can get priority and go help fight for Scuttle or take dragons or like let your support go get in some deep wards. So it's really nice to be able to push pretty easily, and wave clear is definitely at a premium in the bot lane. Twitch doesn't have as much wave clear, but he does have the stealth. So I think that Twitch has more utility in maybe like the mid to late game because he can just work on his positioning better. He can assassinate people. He has different build paths. But Jinx does have more pressure early, and she's really good with those champions that have the CC because you can drop the chompers on them. So if Thresh lands that hook, Pyke lands that hook, Leona engages, you can drop those chompers. It'll CC him, does pretty decent damage. You have your Zap, does extra damage now. So you have like pretty respectable burst damage as Jinx for an AD carry. I mean, it's not going to be like Misfortune or Jhin level, but you have respectable burst with really, really high scaling later on in the game. If you get an assist and you're just going off for those rockets, you know, she's super, super strong. Everybody knows that about Jinx. But I think the thing that's becoming more obvious to a lot of people is that she actually has a pretty good early game, too. Because she can get, like I said, she has those chompers. She has the wave clear. She can have really long range for harassment with her rockets. So, you know, and that's the stuff they have incrementally buffed over the last year or so about her, is her early game, right? They've given her more damage, more scaling on her Q. I think they did something with the chompers. They've definitely helped her out with some of that stuff. They kind of cleared up a bug with fish bones, which was pretty big, maybe like 5 or 6 patches ago, where Runan's Hurricane wasn't interacting properly with it. But yeah, I think you're still probably going to go Stormrazor, Runan's, Infinity Edge. So pretty good 1, 2, 3 item power spike. You might even get Runan's first. Let me see here. Well, he lost this game, but nah, it looks like people are still going Stormrazor. It's just too big of a power spike. But that's a really nice 1, 2, 3 power curve for her. So yeah, I think Jinx really good. Good combination of early game power combined with late game scaling. Now, she doesn't have any escapes. You go lethal tempo on Jinx instead of fleet these days. So just lethal, triumph, alacrity, coup de grace, celerity, gathering storm, and then Stormrazor, Hurricane, Infinity. She doesn't have very good escapes. So if you're against like a Pyke or a Thresh or a Xayah, Leona, something like that, that's really bad. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend blind picking Jinx because it's just really hard into those champs. But if you know that they are but she's really good if they don't have that much engage. So I don't know that I'd blind pick her, but I think if you pick her in the right circumstances, if you have a little bit of visibility on the support, or if you know, op.gg and you see that, you know, your support knows what's going on and they're playing something like Thresh and you trust them to protect you, then maybe you can do it. But yeah, she's the strongest. Like, if you have a good support with you that can peel you and protect you, she's definitely one of the strongest ones. So she can't do it herself and just win despite having a monkey support as well as these. It's definitely better if you have a good support, but I think these three can do it a bit better than Jinx if you have a monkey support. So she's still very strong, but just a little bit lower for that reason. Twitch is another one I think that's just always going to be lingering around tier 1, maybe high tier 2. He has a really tough early game, but if you get just that single item, right, you just get the Blade the Ruined King, he can just completely obliterate people later on. I've seen Twitches go like 0-8 to start with and then end up like 12-8. You know, it's like really, really strong as the game goes on, and everybody kind of understands that. The main reason is he has an attack speed steroid and an AD steroid, so and he has his poison, which is an additional modifier. So, you know, he scales really well off of just any item that you get, pretty much, because he has like that triple scaling, and that just makes it very strong. And he's invisible, so he can show up and assassinate people that are out of position, and he has 850 range on his ultimate for whatever reason, and his ultimate hits multiple targets. Like, he's very good at picking people off, team fighting, just everything. He doesn't wave clear that well early. Just pretty much, if you can get through the laning phase, you know, if you're against something that's relatively simple in the laning phase, Vayne, Ezeal, maybe Jinx, something like that, and they're just sitting over there with like a Sona or a Janna or just something that's like not gonna like hard engage and blow you up early, then you can definitely make it through. And you know, you can go press the attack, triumph, alacrity, coup de grace, absolute gathering. Now this is a really greedy build. You would start Doran's shield to get through this. I honestly think if you're in a really tough spot that you can get like more sustain than this if you want to. Like, you could take fleet. Heck, you could even, you know, if you had to go into like domination or something, you could go into domination and take something like Taste of Blood, and then the thing that does extra damage. You could take the lifesteal rune instead of coup de grace or Taste of Blood. You could take the ability like healing thing and use that off of your poison. So I think some of that is going to depend on like how much pressure they put on you. Now keep in mind, you do also get a Vamp Scepter early, so that does help out a lot. So I mean, usually if you start Doran's Shield plus Vamp Scepter as your first item, you can make it through, and then Fleet if it's a really hard lane. You see a lot of people are still going lethal. I mean, I guess you can go lethal as well, and that's better like later on in the game. I still think that PTA is pretty good, but looks like a lot of people are going lethal. But yeah, there's a couple people going PTA. I mean, I think all of those are viable. I think PTA is good early on. That that can help you out. That's also good at tank busting because remember the 12% extra damage debuff applies to everyone on your team, not just you. So it helps everyone kill that Olaf to get him off of you or to get the Mundo out of your face or whatever. So I do think that PTA is good against tanks, whereas like Lethal Tempo is good at like wiping out whole teams later on. So, I mean, they're both really good. I guess I can switch that to Lethal because that looks like kind of the trend that everybody's going. And I'm just going to assume they know a lot more than I do about this. Yeah, overall, it's still going to be a really strong champ. Okay, getting down into Tier 2, I think that Jhin is still really good. Jhin could deserve a spot in Tier 1. I just see so many people mess him up. Like, if you don't properly aggro early on with him, like, if you aren't really using that 4th shot and causing a lot of chaos early, then he can get outscaled. So I think he gets outscaled by, like, Jinx, Twitch, Lucian later on, and he has a hard time breaking through tanks. But he is still really good, you know, if you can leverage that early game advantage. So, you know, a lot of people are still going to go Stormrazor on him. It's just going to be Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Infinity Edge, just that one-shot hit. Kind of similar to Draven. And then you want to go for Hail of Blades. I know that seems stupid, but when I looked this up a few patches ago, the reason that you go that is the attack speed triggers as soon as the attack leaves your hand. And that's important to note. That's very different from something like Lethal Tempo. So as soon as you fire that attack, while it's mid-air, then you get the attack speed. And usually attack speed is not a great stat early game for most AD carries. And that's why a lot of people won't go Hail of Blades. But on Jhin it is because that attack speed gets converted to AD. So basically what this means is when you go up with Hail of Blades, you auto-attack somebody. I think it's like at level 2 or 3 or something like that. You get 20 extra AD. And that scales up to give you something like 80 extra AD. At some point. Maybe it's not that high, but I know it starts at 20. I did the math in a previous video. And so that's why. It's like you get to come to lane with an extra, like, couple of long swords. You know, it's a casual 700 gold extra stats. It basically turns you into, like, a little mini Draven. It doesn't hit quite as hard as, like, Draven's Qs do early on, but it's really nice, and it scales later on into the game as well. Then he can actually get some pretty good stuff in the Domination Tree. You know, he can get Taste of Blood, and I guess you'd have to get the Poro, and then the last one is probably just the ability healing, I would imagine. Yeah, Ravenous Hunter. So you have like double healing, huge early game damage, goes Poro, gives you a little bit of vision, a little bit of extra AD potentially. Then you can just go Mana Flow. I don't like Celerity at all. I would go Gathering Storm. He scales so well off of AD. I would probably go Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm. What are other people getting on him? I mean, you do get the extra move speed. I'd have to do the math on it, because whenever you get a crit, you do get the extra move speed, and maybe that translates into a lot of AD that I just haven't calculated yet. You can go Eyeball Collection instead of Poro, too, if you want. But I would definitely go Gathering Storm, and then think about, you know, whatever else you want. I guess that's fine. I just feel like Absolute Focus, especially because you have double healing, is going to give you a lot more advantage in the early game. And I'd rather have the early game advantage than wait on the Celerity, like, in scaling to kick in later after you get your Tier 2 boots and more crit. So, he's still going to be really good. Good early game powerhouse. Good chaining together sort of his utility with other CC supports like Leona, Thresh, Pyke. You know, if you can land that W and then throw a trap underneath them, you know, if they don't flash or dash out of it, then they're probably going to die. So he can be very good if you snowball really hard. He's great at killing squishy champions, like squishy fighter type of champions that are running at you. You know, something like a Riven or even some assassins. You know, you can chunk off like 75% of their health early on. He's just very bad against tanks. Okay. Misfortune, kind of like Jhin, very strong early game, has a questionable late game. Her ult is always powerful, so if you can get into a team fight, if your team has a lot of CC, if you have like a Sejuani, I don't know, maybe a Zac, Leona, just a lot of stuff that can CC, then she can be pretty good later on. If you're good at bouncing those Qs off of dying minions, you can definitely chunk people out, do a ton of damage. I would still recommend just going the full lethality, just Dustblade, Ghostblade. and just you have to snowball. So she's terrible against tanks, just like Jhin, but she does have really good laning phase, right? Especially against squishy champs. So now she can get engaged on and blown up, you know, by the Leona, the Thresh, the Pikes, all that kind of stuff. She kind of suffers from that, kind of like Jinx, Twitch, Jhin. All of these are real squishy, you know, immobile champs. So just be aware of that as you go in. But she does have probably the best, like, one button, you know, eradicate, just clean everybody out in a team fight. Maybe Twitch as well, but she's very, very good at that. She's just not as good at one-on-one fighting as the game goes on. But she should be able to win lane. She is very fast, so she can rotate and show up to team fights because of her strut. So she has a lot going for her. She can be very strong. I just think that since tanks are rising up a little bit more, and because she is so vulnerable to pick champions, that maybe it's a little tougher than it used to be, but she's still pretty good. Now, Varus is someone who's picked a lot in pro play and is very good in pro play, but that doesn't translate in a solo queue a lot. But if you're very good on Varus, like he's the second most played AD carry in pro play right now. If you're very good on Varus, then he's great. So he can actually shred through tanks really quickly with his passive. He's another person who does a bunch of magic damage like Xayah. So if Xayah's banned, you need some hybrid damage on your team. A little bit of magic damage, right, Rory? Just a little bit. Then he can be pretty good. I think he's going to build Blader and King Ginsu most of the time. And that's a really nice 1-2 punch. The Blade gives you that extra early game, you know, sustain, early game firing power. And then the Ginsus combined with the double trigger on the Blade of the Rune King, plus his E, adding that extra on-hit damage is really, really nice. And then I think you typically go Hurricane, so that you're able to stack that Blight on multiple targets at once. So, pretty good, nice range. He has 575 range. He can poke in lane. He has, you know, if you can hit your arrows, he has okay poke. He, of course, has his ultimate. It's on a low cooldown, has lots of CC. Not only hits one target, but in a team fight, if people are bunched up, can potentially hit multiple targets. So, has really high sustained damage, nice CC, pretty good wave clear, especially as the game goes on. You know, he even has a healing debuff, so you don't even have to get the Mortal Reminder or anything like that later on if you don't want to. I think his E, the little circle, does a healing debuff, so he's really good. I mean, his problem is you have to be able to hit these things. You have to be able to hit the skill shots. You have to actually leverage and use his 575 range, and you have to just not get run over in the early game by these hard engaged champs because you don't have a lot of escapes. So I think he has a lot of potential. I think he can be very strong in the right hands. Very good professional play, but yeah, he just is not going to have the raw, like, hey, I got mega fed, I'm just going to completely steamroll the game by myself, as much as something like a Jinx or a Twitch, you know, might have, but nevertheless, still very strong. Is that right, Rory? Are you strong?
Yes.
Is this a strong baby? Yeah? Is that right, Rory?
Dada let her take a nap at 6:30. So
Yeah, Dada. She's taking a little nap.
She doesn't seem very tired, but she's gonna go to bed here in a minute.
Ezreal, still gonna be very strong. Now, I moved him down from tier 1 just because there are so many bad Ezreals out there. But I think that if you get good on Ezreal, he's, you know, definitely tier 1 still.
Oh.
So, what?
That thing on Sadie's ear is definitely not bigger.
Yeah, it's not funny. I'm going to have to try to run her by the bed. And she's got one on her neck, too. So that's not good.
Thank you for not dropping that on Kitty.
Thank you. But yeah, I mean, y'all know Ezreal has really good poke, really good potential for burst damage. If he gets somebody to half, you know, it's a very high percentage play. If it's just one-on-one, it just E in, auto, Q auto, and they're dead. So, you know, you just poke them down, and then if you find an opportunity, you can wipe them out. You just have to be careful eating forward because you're not going to have an escape if you do that. But super safe, you know, if they have an AD assassin, he's your go-to. They have a Zed or a Talon or whatever. You can get Iceborne Gauntlet in a pinch. You can even get Ninja Tabby if they're really fed. He has great poke. I mean, I sold a Rengar the other night as Ezreal, a Rengar that jumped on me as Ezreal during Viewers Night. He's very, very good against those type of champs, and those types of champs are very popular in solo queue. So he does have a bad matchup against Vayne, who is really popular right now because she can run him down, dodges Qs with her Q, and do a lot more sustained damage. Right, Rory? Is that right, you little baby? But he can be very, very good. He does get extra money because of Klepto. I like him. He's my favorite AD carry, but there are a lot of dunces that play Ezreal. He's not amazing against tanks, but with Iceborne Gauntlet, you can kite them pretty well. So it'll take you a while to hack through them, but they're not going to catch you, probably. So, I'm a big fan. Are you a fan, Rory? Are you a fan? Ezreal, yay!
You clap? You clap for Ezreal? Good job. Clap for Ezreal.
She feels heavier than she did a few months ago.
Once. Well, she is, sweetie.
Oh, no, she's got her thumb in her mouth. Is that right, Rory?
Good, baby.
All right. So, yeah, Ezreal, still going to be strong. Now, Xayah has fallen quite a lot. She's been nerfed several times over the last year. She's very good with Rakan and pro play, and Rakan's very popular. She does have nice wave clear early. She does scale pretty well. She does have like good team utility. She's one of the best team fighting AD carries. Kind of a great combination of safety and fighting. You know, the current itemization is not amazing on her. Good night, Rory. And the reason it's not that amazing is because Stormrazor doesn't give you any static crit. In the sense that, like, you don't actually have critical strike as a stat. It just allows you to crit on your attack. So that makes her E do a lot less damage. Because back in the day, when people would just build 3, you know, crit items, the Static Shiv, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge, all of that improves the damage she does on E. But Stormrazor doesn't give her anything on E. So yes, she has to get Stormrazor because she has to keep up early on. But she really doesn't want to get that item. She would much rather go back to the days where she could just get, you know, Fleet Footwork plus Static Shiv, Rapid Fire, Infinity. But alas, those days are gone. So she's okay. I mean, I think you would still go for just the standard, you know, Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Infinity. There are some people toying around with other builds, but I think that's probably just the best on her. So she's pretty good. If you like her, she can definitely, you make her work. It does require a bit more mechanics to play her. You have to get your feathers correct, make sure you're pulling them back, hitting the right targets, make sure you're using the ult at the right time, and like not getting CC'd. So she's harder to play mechanically from your side than a lot of these other champs, but she can be worth it, particularly if you have a Rakan on your team, or just someone else that can like hold people still. Like she's very good with CC, because that allows her to set up her feathers and then pull them back. So you want some CC people on your team. She takes time and setup to do a lot of her damage, though. She does not do as much upfront burst as some of these other champs. Okay, moving down into Tier 3. We've got Ashe. So I moved Ashe up a little bit here. CC is just really good right now. You know, a lot of teams are just not running a lot of CC. You're seeing some back in the jungle. You're still seeing a lot of Kindred, but we are seeing a bit more things like Gragas in the jungle. Not a ton of CC. I guess the top lane tanks are coming back. But, I mean, a big part of it is that she can go that Blather and King first. And they've nerfed Ginsu's. They've nerfed a lot of the crit items over time. So, as I said earlier, Blade users are going to be in a pretty decent spot here. So she just goes Blade, Hurricane, Infinity Edge. And, yeah, pretty good. I mean, she's a lot weaker in solo queue than she is in pro play because people don't properly utilize her hawk shot. If you do hawk shot, you should hawk shot through their whole jungle, see the camps, and then if you know where their jungler is, ping it. So if all the camps are missing on bot side, ping top side. If you don't see them in the jungle somewhere on the bot side, just so your top side jungler knows. So you really have to communicate around that hawk shot. And just really track the jungle timers ideally and know when they're coming up, and then hawk shot to see like if they're there at the appropriate time. So she has a lot of utility with that vision. She has nice slows. She has pretty good poke, good range and lane. Though she's very light on escapes. And if she ever gets caught out in a gank or, you know, by a Pyke, a Thresh, or Leona, something like that, then she's probably going to die. So she's okay. She doesn't do as much like top-end damage often as many of the other champs like Kaisa, like Varus, Twitch, Jinx, you know, in team fights, but she's just pretty nice utility. I would rather probably play more raw power in solo queue, but if you already have a lot of damage, you just need a way to start a fight, then she can be very strong. Okay, Trist is another one who's starting to see a little bit of a revival. Her win rate is not amazing right now in solo queue. It's okay. It's getting close to 50%. It was down as low as like 45 at one point. Also a victim of itemization, kind of like Xayah. She really doesn't want to get Stormrazor because she's not really designed to do a lot of upfront burst. She's designed to do damage over time and like play around her bombs. But it's still alright. You just go Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Infinity Edge, and she does take structures really quickly. One thing about Trist is she's very safe. She's probably the safest AD carry, or like very close with like Ezeal. Because not only does she have a dash away with her W, but it also basically makes her immune to crowd control. If you've ever seen that W, like whenever you buffer it, when you start jumping, nothing can stop you from jumping. So if you start that animation to jump and like Blitz hooks you, you're still going to jump. Or, you know, anything else hits you, you're still going to jump. Now you might be CC'd at the end of the jump. So you might be stunned for a little bit at the end of the jump. But you're going to move that full length away. So it's a very troll interaction. It's really strong. And then she has her ult, which is on a pretty short cooldown. Does quite a bit of burst damage, but can also knock back multiple people. So it only damages one person, but it can knock back a lot of people. So it's very good disengage. So you have, you know, good disengage with your R, a good jump away with your W. And as the game goes on, you get more attack range too. So eventually you can position pretty safely. And she has an attack speed steroid in her kit. She has the bomb, which is really good for trading. She has resets off her W. Really good at taking towers. Pretty decent at wave clear early on for an AD carry, just because she just naturally wave clears with her E. It is hard to last hit under tower if you get pushed in because of that explosion. But yeah, still overall pretty good champion. It's just sometimes people jump forward when they shouldn't. Sometimes people don't manage the wave properly and get pushed in and fall behind a lot in CS. Like, there are definitely some things that can go wrong with Trist. She also has only 525 range early, so she can get bullied out. She doesn't have a lot of, like, point-click burst damage or CC. So she has some problems, but she still scales really well, and she's safe. So that's really nice. If you don't like playing Ezreal, and, you know, they have, like, a bunch of things that are going to dive you and try to kill you, then she's one of the better options to pick. Okay, another option, Vayne. Now, Vayne is becoming a lot more popular. I'm seeing Vayne all over the place. I still don't think she's that great in solo queue. The problem with Vayne is she just has, like, no contributions in the laning phase and, like, almost no utility as the game goes on. You know, and no area of effect damage. So it's just straight up 1v1 dueling, you know, with Vayne. In the laning phase, you know, it's just auto attacks. Like, she has nothing else. I mean, you can pin people into the wall maybe with your E. Very conditional, doesn't do a ton of damage, considering how hard it is to get that in a lot of situations. So, you know, you can just get run over. People can just come up and do whatever they want to you, and you're not going to be able to fight them back a lot of the time unless you have a really good support. So you're just going to get bulldozed in the laning phase most of the time. She is good off. She does have a 1-2, like, really strong item power spike. So, like, Blade the Ruined King is very good on her. Then she gets Gensu's after Blade. And when she gets both of those, she's very, very strong. Particularly against tanks. Because she attacks really quickly. And she has the Silver Bolts. And she's going to have Blade the Ruined King triggering off of Gensu's. So, she will mow through some tanks if she gets both of those items. But you got to get there first. You know, if you're behind, like, 50 CS and you're first tower's down at 12 minutes, it's going to be a really hard time for you. So she's okay. Now, she is very vulnerable in the sense, or, sorry, not as vulnerable as some of these others. She's very mobile, is what I meant to say. So she can dodge things like Thresh, Blitz, Pike, Leona, stuff like that. So she does have that advantage over people like Jinx, over people like, you know, Jhin and Misfortune. She can dodge that stuff a lot easier. So she has that. But if you play Vayne, basically, you better have, like, superb last-hitting skills, and you better never get hit by any skill shots. Like, you better dodge everything with your Qs. So, just very, very mechanically demanding champion. But she is one of the premier tank breakers. So particularly if Kai'Sa's banned, the problem is I just think that Kai'Sa's just a better Vayne. Like Kai'Sa's pretty mobile too. I think she does similar sustained damage, but she's just a lot more flexible and comes online a lot faster. But they're both very strong. So like Vayne can be good, particularly if Kai'Sa's banned and you want a tank breaker. Okay, Caitlyn's starting to come back a little bit. Now, historically, Caitlyn has been one of the best AD carries of all time. Just recently, you know, she just does not really have a good rune, does not have good itemization. Now, she can go Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Infinity, and that's starting to get decent for her. A lot of the other AD carries have kind of been nerfed around her. And I think people are still just going Fleet on her. And she's coming up a little bit, right? So a lot of people aren't playing her, but 52%. I'll guarantee we will see her in some early game Siege comps at Worlds. I mean, she's just great, but you have to play her. She's one of the hardest AD carries to play. She shouldn't be, but somehow she is. Because people just do not lay those traps down correctly. They do not combo her correctly. They don't leverage her 650 range. But if you get good on her, she's one of the best one-trick AD carries because... like, 650 range is never going to go out of style. Being able to control zones with traps. Very, very good. And just taking down towers. The problem is she gets outscaled. She has a pretty weak early game. Or, like, a pretty weak mid to late game. Because she has no attack speed steroids and she has no AD steroids. So whereas someone like Jinx, Twitch, these other people all have things that give them extra attack speed, extra AD, some kind of extra utility, right? She has nothing. It's just straight up, like... and her base attack speed is very slow compared to a lot of his other champions. So you really, really have to siege towers and have, like, immaculate zone control with her traps to use her correctly. So can she be really strong in the right comp? Could she be tier 1? Yes. Will she be most of the time with most people in solo queue? No. But I think that she can be good. It's very difficult to balance her to where she's viable but not oppressive to other picks. And I think they've done an okay job. They could maybe buff her up a little bit. Like, maybe see a little more trap damage or something. But overall, it's pretty good. Sivir's the final one. I wouldn't play Sivir most of the time. I mean, if you have a bunch of bruisers and you just want to run them all into your team and your support doesn't play anything that gives mobility and they just don't feel like getting Righteous Glory or anything like that, then you could run Sivir. The problem is, like, Sivir's utility, like, and why she was so strong... you know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago is because certain items didn't exist. You know, like, Righteous Glory didn't exist, so tanks did not have a good option. Like Malachi and, you know, that type of stuff did not have a good option to get into the fight. They, you know, someone like Sivir could boost them and run them into the fight, and you'd see these comps with, like, Sivir Karma, where you just, like, run your team of, like, three bruisers into the enemy team. Well, now they can just get Righteous Glory, or they just have other, like, runes, Phase Rush, or just other things that can give them mobility. So Sivir's lost a lot of her original luster. She also was nerfed a lot. Now, she does have great wave clear, but the problem is her mana is terrible. I really wish they would buff her by saying, if you block a spell with Spell Shield, it gives you back a lot of mana, or it lowers the cooldown on Spell Shield by 50% if you actually block something. I think that'd be amazing. So that would reward really good Sivir play, where you're getting those blocks, and it's giving you that mana. But right now, you know, you have to use it in the best case scenario. You have to use, like, your only defensive tool just to get back mana. So you're not, like, you're just always looking to try to block anything they throw at you so you get mana, rather than saving it for, like, the right moment to block engage. You'll block anything, you know, just so you don't run out of mana. So maybe if Essence Reaver was a bit better, she could be stronger, but I just think she's too risky. She's short range, you know, limited defense, limited scaling compared to some of these other champs. Can she wipe out a team fight if everyone stands together and you get to ricochet on all of them? Sure, but so can Twitch, so can Jinx, you know. There's just not a lot of reason to pick her, I don't think. Like, yeah, she can farm well, she has her, like, speed, but I just feel like you're giving up too much. Like, I feel like, you know, most of these champions above her, all of them, are going to give you a better bargain. Better bang for your bargain. Okay, honorable mentions, Kog'Maw, Callista Quinn. So Kog'Maw can be still really good if you put him with like a Lulu or something. He does like heavy sustained magic damage, lots of auto attacks. The problem is that like Xayah exists. So she's just way better at doing that on hit thing. She's more mobile, she puts out similar damage, she just has other utility. Similar with Varus, like not quite the same level of like damage coming out, but similar and more just more utility. So I think they need to buff up Kog'Maw's damage numbers or give him some other utility. Yeah, right now it's rough. Kalista, you would think she'd be a lot better with like Blade and King being so strong right now as an option. Like, you know, Blade and a Hurricane sounds great, but it just takes her too long to stack up all of her stuff in a meta where like people are dying in just a couple of auto attacks bot lane. Like Leona engages 2 autos from Draven, you're dead. She just doesn't have enough time to stack up her spears. So I think in like a longer, like if they nerf Stormrazor a bit more and make it to where the laning phase is a bit longer in the bot lane, then she might come back. But they've nerfed her so much that I think she's too bad right now. And then the rest of them, I'm not really going to go in. These are just kind of like boutique champions. I don't want this to take too long. These are just little boutique champions. They're okay, I guess, if you're really good on them. But by and large, I think you need an AD carry in the current meta. Tanks are coming back. AD carry itemization is back to being pretty good. And runes. I think we're back to you got to have an AD carry. So, you know, there was a time there where you could have some fun with Swain, Heimerdinger, you know, Brand. But, like, against tanks especially, you need that AD carry. You know, taking Baron. Baron is a huge objective right now. It's supremely powerful. And AD carries help take that so much faster than something like a Swain or a Vlad, right? Towers, so much faster with an AD carry than a Swain or a Vlad. So I would definitely go with AD carries right now. And Quinn just got gutted. I mean, they nerfed Lethality, Electrocute, and they nerfed her directly. She got nerfed like 3 or 4 times. So I just wouldn't run her anymore. If you want to run something that's a bully that can burst early game, you know, I'd probably just run like Draven, Lucian, or Jhin. But that's going to be it. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this, be sure to like, subscribe, help other people find the channel, let people know we have quality content here. And yeah, stay tuned for more content. I'll see you next time. Have a great day.